writing from a historical perspective, but not as far back in history. Dana Williams, she has a book called Toni at Random, and it's about Toni Morrison. And so it recently came out, and
I like the name of the book, Tony at
yeah,
Random.
Toni at Random.
Hi,
We
everybody.
Hello,
Hi,
how are you
how are
doing?
you?
Good. How are you?
Wonderful. Welcome to the show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
Yeah. So when exactly did Toni at Random, when was it released?
It's June 16th, I think it is. It
Of this
was.
year. So it's a
Hmm.
new book.
Hmm.
And we've heard a lot about Toni Morrison uh, before and since her death. I went to the movies to see her documentary.
Hmm.
We were gifted tickets to a pre-screening, and I learned some things about her that I had no idea about, and from that. But she was a really a singular person in terms of
Yeah.
just being unusual. Just she had a tremendous fortitude.
Yeah,
She
I
had a
agree.
tremendous confidence in herself and what she believed in.
Yep.
So I'll let you tell it. Uh, Now, Toni at Random, is this about her being at Random House?
Yes.
Or, okay, all right. So is that where your story begins, kind of her Random House career? Is that
Well,
what?
it really looks like very intentionally at the years that she was editor, but I talk a little bit about what I think is the intellectual formation that informs part of her work as an editor. And even before she went to Random House as a senior editor for trade, she was a textbooks editor at a small company called L.W. Singer. So I don't quite start at Random House, but that's the crux of the matter.
Okay. And
Yeah.
you, can you show us the cover? I think I see it on the shelf behind you.
Yeah, she's in the
Can,
background. I
can
usually,
you,
yeah, I
can
was about
you,
to say, I always have one close by too.
okay,
So
all right,
He's
yes.
watching over you.
yeah.
Yes, the
Yep.
iconic writer's legendary editorship. So
Yes.
it's about so
Okay.
what years, well, what years of her career in terms of the dates, but also her years in terms of what what age she was when she went there versus when she uh, left
It was
or
late
stopped being editor.
60s,
Okay,
late
late
60s when
60s.
she went to Singer, and she was there for just over a year and a half. But Random House had actually bought Singer. So it's a murky kind of like, there's no clean start date because she was actually working for Random House while she was at Singer as they transitioned, eventually closed the office. And similarly, the end date is a bit murky in the sense that she stopped editing full time in the early 80s, but would continue to take on one project here or there while she was writing. And then finally by 84, she just said, I'm done with this part of the editorship, and then picks it up again when she edits Tony K. Bambara's These Bones or Those Bones Are Not My Child.
Okay, so was she, who was her publisher for her books?
The first book, The Bluest Eye, is actually by Holt Reinhardt. And then she shifts
Them.
over to Knopf, and Knopf and Random House are a part of the same media group or the same bookseller, but they didn't want the conflict of having her be a writer at the same place where she was an editor. So when she went to Random House, she had the decision about whether or not she would go to Random House or Knopf, and if she would publish with Random House or Knopf. So she decided to do trade work at Random House and then to have Knopf publish her books after Holt Reinhardt.
Well, I think I read somewhere that she was a very voracious editor.
Yeah.
She she took no prisoners basically. And I think she would even do that with her own stuff. She would, I think I saw somewhere where she said she would take an entire chapter and then edit it so much it would just be a couple of paragraphs by the time she was finished.
Well, I mean, in terms of volume, there is a lot that she does, more than 45 books. And then the way that she edited really did change based on who the writer was or who the book was. There were some folks where it was very light touch, very minimal. And then there were other instances where she was there from the beginning. Like, let's think through this idea. Like, does this paragraph work? Does this chapter work? Does this idea work? Does this character work? So it would really depend on what the book was, who the writer was, and what she thought was needed the most for a book.
Okay,
Makes sense.
now what made you focus on Tony for in terms of this book, this particular book?
Yeah, remember being in a graduate class at Howard where we were reading Leon Forrest, Toni K. Bambara, Gail Jones, Henry Dumas, and John McCluskey, all fiction. And I had done my early work in Black women playwrights. So I thought like I kind of wanted to do work in theater in terms of my focus, but I was curious about novels because that was my favorite thing to read. I like to see plays, but if I was going to be a scholar where I was reading all the time, I should probably do something with fiction because plays aren't
Yes.
meant to be read. They really aren't. They're
No.
meant to be watched,
Mhm,
seen,
mhm,
performed.
mhm.
So I took this class on the African American narrative, and I was like, I'm enjoying these books, like, but I'm curious why these in particular, like why these writers. And the teacher for that class was Eleanor Traylor, who was also a faculty member with Toni Morrison when Toni Morrison taught at Howard. And so they became very good friends. And so she casually says, "Oh, those are some of the novels that Toni edited when she was at Random House." And my mind just went like, "What?" Like I didn't know Toni Morrison was an editor. And I had heard that she had done something with the Black Book, but that was kind of vague. I wasn't exactly sure what it was. So I really got curious about the project, really enjoyed it. And I thought that initially that I would do my dissertation on Toni Morrison's fiction and the fiction that she edited to begin to understand that relationship. What was the push pull, the back and forth between her as a fiction writer and her as an editor? And I actually did start the project with that in mind, but I was, young and hard-headed when Dr. Traylor told me that project was too big for a dissertation. I was like, whatever, I'll show her. And of course, 6 months later, I was like, oh, I can't actually do this.
I just kidding.
Yeah, right. I know. Take back. Yeah. So at that point, I said, all right, I'm going to pick one of these writers. So I focused on Leon Forrest, but I said that I would never let the project leave really the forefront of my mind. And then, interestingly enough, because I had chosen Leon Forrest and I had done a year at Northwestern as a Ford Foundation Fellow, and there was an inaugural Leon Forrest lecture after he had made his transition. Morrison gave that lecture. I went to the talk. We talked a little bit after, and I was talking about Leon Forrest, and she looked kind of like, "Why do you know this about Leon Forrest? Like, few people know this." Like, and I said, "Well, my book's just about to go to press on Leon Forrest." And so similarly, she said, "How did you get interested in it?" And I said, "Well, I was in Dr. Traylor's grad seminar." She's like, "Oh, Eleanor, like that, like, oh, okay." And I said, "And what I really originally wanted to do was that class was on your editing fiction writers, and I really want to think about the editorship." And she said, "That was really hard work, and nobody talks about it. So if there's any way that I can be helpful, let me know." Well, at that point, I'm like, "Oh, Toni Morrison has volunteered to help me. Okay, I can do this." So without like in short order, I probably went to figure out when I could get to Princeton because that's where she was teaching at the time. She gave me the information for the person who like helped her with her schedule. I emailed her immediately and it's like first available. And really, I began working on the project in 2005, like after that first interview, where we talked a little bit about what the editorship entailed, but the project didn't expand until many years later because I still was thinking I wanted to focus on the fiction, but it was this kind of ironic thing where she would not talk about the fiction, like interview after interview, and she talk about everything about the fiction. And I'm thinking, like, is she playing games with me? Like, what's happening here? And what I didn't realize then until and I didn't realize until many years later is that I was probably being edited by Toni Morrison in the sense that she's like, this project is bigger than just the fiction. And so I can remember it was probably around 2010, 2012 or so. I said, I think I'm going to have to move beyond the fiction. I think I'm going to have to think about the whole editorship. And she was kind of like, okay, I think you're right. Like, it's about time you come along, you know? So then I began to expand the project and I just thought it was really interesting because there were so few people who had talked about her as editor. And you mentioned Seeing the Pieces I Am when it came out. I know the director loosely, and similarly, he invited me to the screening. But at that point, there was enough of a reputation. I had done enough conference presentations on Morrison's work as editor that people knew that I was working on the book. So, and Miss Morrison's assistant had been helping with the film. And so when they were talking about that period in her life and wanting to cover in the film that period in her life where she was an editor, Renee actually put them in contact with me to say, hey, like, can you look at this? Go like, where do we find certain materials? Because this is going to be an interesting part of the documentary. And all I was thinking was, please, please, please don't like have the big reveal before this book comes out. And it was just enough of a teaser for people to say, and did you see that part about Toni Morrison as editor? That's really interesting. And it was at that point that I thought, like, let's try to create some buzz and some momentum to say yes, and there will be a book on it soon.
Okay. Yeah,
Love it.
because that was something that a lot of people didn't know about.
Yeah.
Most people knew of her as a novelist, as a
Hmm.
writer,
Hmm.
and they didn't know how she got there exactly. And but she had a major editing career at a time when there weren't very many Black women in that
Not
position
at
at
all.
all.
Marie Brown is still with us, and she was at Doubleday at the same time that Morrison was at Random House. But outside of, a few folks, there were a couple of males, Phil Petrie, I mean, male or female in terms of
Mhm.
African Americans. Charles Harris was actually at Random House before Morrison was, and is probably deserves as much of an intimate study as Morrison has because he is the person who understood the industry from top to bottom. He understood everything about making a book. And
Mhm.
he actually left Random House to found the Howard University Press. And Morrison had just left Howard teaching and moved to Random House. They had a very brief moment of overlap, but she was, a lone ranger of sorts.
Mhm. Yes, she was. And I didn't
I can see
realize
that.
that she had won the Pulitzer. Was it the Pulitzer? I think it was the Pulitzer. When she went to Sweden, I think it was Sweden that
The
she went to.
Nobel.
It was the Nobel. Okay,
Hmm.
okay. I couldn't remember if it was the Pulitzer or the Nobel. And I
Yep.
didn't even know they did. That this is what's coming back to me when I saw that. I didn't even know that they gave a Nobel Prize for any kind of literary work at all. I didn't even
Hmm.
know that was a thing
It's the
till
whole
I saw
body of
the
literature, which is
documentary.
like really how it distinguishes it from the Pulitzer. The Pulitzer is usually on one book, whereas the Nobel is like you have like
The
a
body of
whole
work.
body of work
Yeah.
that we think, is just
Okay.
really remarkable. It was not without pressure. Like there was a campaign really to have her recognized as a major American writer. The National Book Award, the Pulitzer, like literally it was, the 2024, what 20, no, it might have been 20, whenever Oscar So White came out and then
Yeah.
publishing So White and We Need Diverse Books, like that was happening in the 80s because like there was just like complete disregard for Black writers. So the kind of public campaign where more than 100 writers and scholars took out a full page ad in the New York Times saying recognize Toni Morrison as like a really quintessential American writer. And
Oh,
that then also led to her popularity.
okay. I didn't know about I didn't know about that ad. But
Mhm.
those things do work.
They do.
Those
Like the
kinds of
pressure,
efforts do
public
work.
pressure makes a
Mhm.
difference because, I
Mhm.
mean, that's true of pretty much anything.
Yeah,
People
it is.
will only do what you make them do. Like, what
Yeah.
is it? Like Frederick Douglass, like freedom, like it's something that you have to nurse. You have to sit at freedom's bedside all the time, essentially, is what he said. Like, you
Mhm.
have to really push it. That kind of power doesn't concede anything unless you insist that something else happen.
Right.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. It was so much about her that I didn't know before I saw that documentary,
Yeah.
And I know I wasn't alone, a
Yep, I
lot of
agree.
people didn't know that much about her. She was always very calm when she talked about whatever it was she was talking about.
Yeah.
She
I
was
can
always
appreciate that. Yeah,
very
I
calm.
appreciate how contemplative it was. Like whatever question you ask her, you could tell that she had thought about it for a long time already. you know?
Yes.
Mhm.
Hmm.
Just a very thoughtful and deliberate person. And I can say for the most part that public persona is, and that kind of gregariousness and kind of seriousness and matter of factness, like telling you to your face that something's stupid. Like, when you remember when that lady asked the question, like, when are you going to write about white people? And she said, you can't
Yeah.
know how racist that is. Like, just matter of fact, dead on, not I'm playing nice because this is going to be televised. Yeah, she was just, that's an incredibly racist question. Yeah.
I mean, well, it's not only racist, it's just stupid. I mean,
Yeah, well, there's that. So I guess to some degree we can say that, she was like she was euphemistic. It was soft and she didn't say, no, that's just stupid. Yeah.
Yeah, it's
but
kind of like when people say, well, how come we don't have a White History Month?
Yeah.
mhm,
Right.
yeah,
Right.
yeah,
Exactly.
or they'll I get these comments at least 3 times a week on our National Black Book Festival Facebook page that somebody comments and says, when is the National White Book Festival? And I just block and delete, but I really want to tell them it's every
Today,
other event,
tomorrow, right
every
now,
other event.
yesterday.
Yeah, just
Right.
because
Yeah.
they have
But
one or two
if
black
you were open to
people.
a real conversation, if they were open to a real conversation, I wouldn't mind having that conversation
Yeah.
because
But
I
they're
think a
not.
lot of times people
Right.
being exclusionary by saying we want to promote black books or what
Hmm.
have you,
Right.
and they
And
don't realize that in majority white spaces that black books are pushed to the side.
Hmm.
They're not given the same exposure. They're not given the same publishing benefits. There's so much, and if
Hmm.
we don't we and there are so many white people who will look at a book and see a black face on it and automatically think, oh, this book isn't for me.
Hmm.
So they're not going to read it. So if we're not supporting our books and they're not supporting our books, then where does that leave our black authors?
It's tough. I mean, and that's part of the point that Morrison was making around the reader, saying, like, listen, people, the default reader or the
yeah,
default narrator for so long has been white. I
right.
don't have interest in doing that. Like, you can assume that whoever is talking in my book is a black person and that I am talking to a black reader. And people don't
Mm.
necessarily recognize that without even having to state it, the assumption is white.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
default is white. That's
Hmm.
that's what it is for most things in
Hmm.
America.
When I was a
So
teenager and went to modeling school, I'm never going to forget that our instructor for the day was talking about, oh yeah, I went to Barbizon.
I didn't know that. See, I've learned something. Rhonda and I've been friends for years and had this show for 5 years. She never told me she went to
Well,
modeling
Yeah, I
school.
saw
I
you
didn't
say you went to modeling school.
think about it until this specific moment.
Okay.
And our instructor was talking about the All American look. And she said the All American look is blonde hair and blue eyes. And I sat there thinking, well, where does that
Well,
leave
that
me?
is, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and the other part of it that is so insidious is that's not even true.
Right.
Like
Mm-hmm.
the number of people who are actually white, blue haired, and I mean white, blonde hair and blue eyed, like abysmally small.
Hmm.
And yet
Right.
we
Right.
are
Well,
leading, we're having that as the standard.
especially those that are naturally blonde,
Right. Yeah.
because only a small percentage of the people that you see with blonde hair, just look at their roots and look
Hmm.
at their eyebrows, they might are
Hmm.
actually blonde. Because blondes, it's a small portion of the world that grows blonde haired people.
Yep, but we have somehow
But
made that, the world has somehow made that its standard. And so part of the adjustment has to be to say, no, wait, that's not it. And the pushback against saying that we dare to imagine that a standard of beauty does not follow that same rubric. Like there's always resistance to that.
right,
And the interesting thing is, like writers like Morrison and so many of the writers that she edited didn't try to say, no, the standard of beauty is this. Instead of that, it was trying to say all of these things are beautiful. Like, let's not
right,
exclude this. That's something that I think is um, just like an asset of sorts. The way that Wale Soyinka describes it in the book of Africa is it is like Africa's greatest gift to the world, the humanism, the notion that I don't have to, my goodness is not contingent upon making you bad. Like I can be good as a function of myself. Yeah, I
Right.
don't need
Hmm.
to put you down
Right.
to
You
make
don't need
my
to
thing.
villainize
Right.
someone else
Right.
in order to feel good
Hmm.
about yourself.
Hmm.
Mhm. And a person who does, and Toni Morrison did allude to that, or she mentioned that in the documentary when she said, and it's something that stuck with me. She said, if you can only feel good if somebody else is on their knees, what
Yep.
does that say about you?
Yep. Yep.
That's and that's so sometimes when people and with the Black Book Festival, for example, I tell people if you don't have a problem with Cinco de Mayo or St. Patrick's Day or Chinatown, then leave us alone because this
Yeah.
is this is our event. That's what this is what we want to call it. This is what we want to call ourselves, and we get to decide. And guess what? People of all nationalities come to our event because we don't make people feel like they
That's
shouldn't
right.
be there
Hmm.
at when we do stuff.
Yeah, there's a welcome aspect to it. And
Yes,
similarly, I think it's interesting as important as Morrison is to African American literature, and as clear as she was that she was an African American writer, when she edits a number of different books, like all of the authors, aren't black. And she would say that. She's like, now all of the books that I edited weren't by black writers, and I didn't even like all of them. But that's not the point. The point is, the point is you give people the space to think and have their ideas tested out with audiences. Like
yes,
that's what you're trying to do to like see what's happening with the discourse. Is the argument solid? Is the story interesting? So having an understanding that the world is better when there are more voices than no voices or
yes,
one voice, like is part of what I see is like critically important and for us to think about in terms of like black books, black authors, black bookstores,
mm-hmm.
um, black publishers, and then the whole industry really, because the industry still really does have a very long way to go in terms of diversity.
It does.
Yeah.
It really does. A lot of the people who then this is what we run into, and that really irritates me, but I have to live with it. But I try to do a workaround. A lot of the gatekeepers for the Black authors are not Black people.
Hmm.
And so they don't necessarily look for Black spaces for them to promote themselves, to promote the author. The person who's the marketer, publicist, or whatever, they're not necessarily looking for Black spaces. They're looking at Good Morning America or something like that, which is great. I think if someone gets on there, that's a great come up. But you need a solid readership that's going
Yep,
to
you got to
stick
have that
with
base
you.
first.
Yes,
Yep.
come hell or high water,
And the
and that.
gatekeepers, I mean, it's really interesting. It's one of the things that I hope people will find useful about the book, especially writers, like trying to understand what are the questions you need to ask? What are the things that you need to insist on? Because the way that she
Right.
tried to nurture and take care of people who would have otherwise been taken advantage of, I think is instructive. And then she was also, Random House was one of the last publishing houses where the writer or the editor didn't have to take the book to committee. The editor could go straight to the editor in chief and say, "Hey Gwen, I found this like incredible writer. I really want to publish this book by Rhonda Lawson. Here's the pitch, here's the audience." And as editor, we could say, "All right, go for it. How much are you thinking for the advance? How many copies do we need to print? How are we going to market? What's publicity going to look like? What are we trying to do?" Every other house had to go to a committee. And in that committee, you had, say, 12 other editors.
Okay.
And you're the only Black woman editor in the room. And when
Mm.
you make your pitch for Gwen's book, then editor number two says, "I don't get it." And editor number three says, "I don't really see how this resonates." Editor number four says, "Nope." Editor number five says, "Well, maybe." And then editor number six goes, I don't see where it lands. So that gatekeeping was happening by default. Like before it
Hmm.
ever got to the shelf, it never
Hmm.
stood a chance because the
Hmm.
people sitting around the room just didn't have the vision and couldn't see. I don't know that I would
And they
read this.
probably didn't look like the editor or didn't look like the writer.
Oh, absolutely not. Because
No,
you got one
no.
black editor in the room.
Yeah, it's
Like
a
there was
room full of
no
white people.
house with more than one
No.
black editor.
And
So you
this
have
is
one
why
black editor.
representation matters.
Hmm.
Yeah, it absolutely matters because you're
Right.
trying to convince everybody in the room. And that's now I got an advance for this book. I got a contract for this book. Then you got to
Hmm.
go to the design team. Then you have to go to like everything in pre-production. You got to go to publicity and marketing. And you have to say, um, you can't sell this book at this bookstore. You need to sell this book at this bookstore because this is where the traffic's going to come from. But black bookstores aren't on the list. So when you look at like Toni Morrison's archive, part of what you see is list of like black bookstores, list of like readers that she knows that she can get blurbs from. So you had to build that network and build that community because it wasn't built for you in the same way that it's built at other places and other houses.
Right.
So I think it's important for writers to think about what should I be looking out for? Like, yep, my agent's looking out for me, possibly, or as best as your agent can. But you also have to say, like, hey, when I do this book launch, I want to do this book launch at this location. I mean, like really, really small stuff. Like when I did
Mm-hmm.
the launch in DC, I said I really want a black bookstore. So I went with Mahogany. Mahogany
Mhm.
doesn't have a physical space that could accommodate the crowd in the same way. So I said, let's go to Martin Luther King Library because like that has a particular kind of resonance for me. It's newly renovated, but I did all of my graduate work there. The space is familiar and you got everything like like everybody's there. So,
Okay.
they give you like the warning, like, well, it's a public library and we're a cooling station. So there may be some outbursts. And I'm like, I've been in this library my whole life. Homeless people don't scare me. You know, like as a matter of fact, like I know that like part of the time they sit here, they're reading. That's yep, I will answer the question and I will engage. But you have to then, to be able to tell you and hope that you have a team that says, okay, if that's what you want to do, if you think that's your base, because Mahogany
Yeah.
has a list of 10,000 people who they know have bought their books. I could go
Hmm.
Mhm.
somewhere else. And I did my second DC event at Politics and Prose because that's a different kind of readership, a very sophisticated readership, sure, but not necessarily Black. So they want to read Morrison too, but it's a different kind of approach altogether and making sure that you're in conversation with your team to say, this is what I think matters. Like having this event here, making sure that you send review copies to these influencers. And by influencers, I don't necessarily mean social media, but I think that's important too. I'm thinking like, here are the folks that people in the community are looking for. When I'm looking for a blurb, I'm not looking for a blurb from like Amy Tan because me people that I'm reading aren't reading Amy Tan,
Well,
so you're
right.
trying to find like who's the folks who when I pick up a book and I go, okay, Amani Perry had this to say about this book. I might open it and flip and see what's inside. So those are all of the things
Hmm.
that I think writers have to take into consideration when you're saying like, how do I sell the book? And then you have to make the decision, what's most important to me in terms of the idea that I'm able to convey. And am I going to have the flexibility to be able to do that? Or are they going to try to force me to have a certain conversation? So, and of course, like I published this book with Amistad, which is the oldest Black imprint that is
Mhm.
still in
Hmm.
existence. And that was really important to me. Like I wanted to make sure that whatever attention the book got, whatever um, kind of critical success or engagement, and I wanted to make sure that like it could be done well, with a Black team. So I mean, I tell people I was like fortunate in the sense that from acquisition all the way to promotion, like I tried to make sure that there was much engagement. And as a matter of fact, I'm trying to think, I don't think there was a single guy on my team. I had like overwhelmingly women of color like on the team for this book. So that was exciting to me, and like every opportunity I have to make sure that I can engage audiences, like which is why I was like quickly, like I can't say quickly completely because I'm in email hell. I stay in email hell. But as soon as I got to the email, I was quick to say yes to you all because I think too that Black authors and Black books and Black bookstores like that they matter. I just appreciate the work that you all do.
Well, we go the extra mile because we look for more than one email. And what I have found is that when someone works at a university, they're more apt to respond to their edu email than Gmail or Yahoo or whatever.
I
So
tried to keep my
I
little life
learned
separate. It
that.
didn't work. Yep.
That was the second effort. But I've learned over the years that if someone is at a university, and that you can find the email easier that way too.
Yep. But I actually think with you, I responded like you got a quicker response because it went to my web email because that wasn't like full of traffic. Like my Howard email is just
Oh, okay. Well, I did it twice. So
you did. You got me.
uh-huh.
You got me. And while one and as soon as I saw it, I was like, yes, no question.
Okay.
Let's do it. Like there
Oh.
was never a like, well, can we like, oh, let's go. What do we got? Like because the kind of work of audience building and creating space for authors and creating space for like books like that too is its own kind of story. Like I'm almost done with Char Adams's book on the Black bookstore.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
So like those are
Black
stories that have
owned.
to, yeah, Black
Mhm.
owned. Yeah, those are
Mhm.
stories that have to be told as well. I was actually on a panel with her at the Texas Book Festival, so I had gotten like
You
about three
were?
quarters through it.
I was at the Texas Book
Oh,
Festival.
we
We
missed each
had a
other. That thing
booth.
was
We
huge.
had a we
Yeah.
had a double booth. I never got to leave the booth because we were so busy the whole time.
Well,
But
that's
I didn't know
good.
you were there.
That's good. No, I didn't even know to look for you. It was like
Yeah.
that thing was like massive. It was every.
Yes, it's
I wish I
massive.
had known. But
It's
there are a couple
massive.
of podcasts, like a couple of other things. Like I was just running into people in the hall because it really was full of like just really incredible engagement. So passing
Mhm.
through, and that's the kind of thing that I hope that people understand like that network is so small or the field is so small that literally passing by people, you're like, oh hey, like what
Yeah.
time is the session? Dang, I'm gonna miss you, but I hope to catch you at this point. Oh,
Yeah.
hey, like, oh yeah, well, are you like and then we all were like trying to go, we were basically going to most of the same stuff, but it was the conversation with Char was good.
Yeah. Well, we're actually a little bit past our time, and we're going to have Charles on the show. I think we're working on the dates, so we've already
Okay.
made contact with them. So, thank you so much for being a guest on the show. You're very, very uh, knowledgeable about the industry as well as Toni Morrison.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you. Thank you. My
okay.
pleasure. My
And
pleasure.
congratulations on your book. I hope it
Thank
continues to
you.
do well.
Thank
I
you. I
know
appreciate it.
I'll be getting it because I just love her work as an editor, and I think this is something that's going to be inspiring for anybody who works in the editing
Yep.
space.
In this
Mhm.
space, like writing, I agree. Like I was thinking about it as Morrison as editor, and I'm thinking about it from the perspective as scholar. It only occurred to me later, like, wait a minute, this is like important for publishing. This is important for editors. This is important for writers. All of it. So thank you all and everybody. Tony at Random, one of
Yeah.
the best Christmas presents you'll ever buy. Kwanzaa, early Black History Month. You can do it.
All of that.
Yeah. All right. Thank you all.
Okay.
Thank
Have a
you.
great
Bye.
night.